That's the one thing that I think every entrepreneur strives for is, have I built a company that can run without me? Can I walk away for a month or two and the business will be okay?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think that's
and
the ultimate goal.
that is so hard because
Very
the
hard.
the business and the entrepreneur are, so closely enmeshed and, and the culture, the clients, and especially in a service-based business, even when you've got products. As I think about you started your creative agency as a side hustle,
Hmm.
and you said now at Cultivize you have 6, I think there's 6 of you.
Hmm.
Did you also start Cultivize on your own
Hmm.
and then begin to add people, or did you have somebody or people that you brought with you, or how did when you made that transition, how did you think about building Cultivize and building out your staff and the people with you?
Yeah. So the one lesson that I learned in the world of the agencies, especially when all the layoffs happen, is that overhead is like detrimental to any business. And the more overhead you have, the more responsibility you have to be able to cover that overhead. And so when I went out on my own, and even when I made the decision to get office space, I knew that when I would hire people, I wasn't going to hire anybody full time. And, I was always going to bring in contractors and people on 1099, contracts for specific projects or specific clients. It allowed me to keep my costs lower and be more competitive, but it also allowed me to control that overhead. I've done the same thing with Cultivize. I mean, we've had, team members we worked with years that are not full time, they're just on a contract basis. And it's allowed us to be very agile as well. We just brought on a new team member a few months ago because we were growing. We needed more bandwidth. So it's much easier to do that in that model. Plus, you could also be more flexible, I think, and just the way depending upon the type of business you have, what state you're in, and things like that, and where those contractors are as well. I mean, there's plenty of people working with people, and I've done it in the past. I don't do it now, but I've plenty in the past worked with people overseas, right? And so, like, there's different things you don't have to worry about from a tax implication, if you have somebody working, wherever, outside the US. So there's definitely a value to that. And there's definitely been a shift for sure. I mean, there's very few companies I talk to. I'm not sure very few, but there's this on the consulting side, most consulting businesses have like a lean crew that are a lot of times like contract based.
Mhm.
And back then in 2002, essentially when I started, there was no virtual agencies. It didn't really exist. Like everybody that I was competing against was either like an individual freelancer or it was like an agency with a whole big staff. And so there's another really quick story. I had shared space with other people that left the agency that were doing more video work. And together we were pitching these ex executives out of HBO for this project with Time Out New York, and which is a publication. I mean, it's all over Time Out. But anyway, and so we had this small office in like Soho in New York, tiny compared to what agencies have, and we didn't have a conference room. We just sat on a couch, with these guys. And they looked around and they're like, we like this vibe. And the reason we like it is we're not sitting at some big fancy conference table with 20 people, knowing that we're going to be paying the salaries of those people and only 2 people in the room are actually going to work on our project.
Right,
That
right.
the money that we're gonna give you is actually gonna go towards the actual project, and that's why we wound up winning the business.
Yeah.
So I
There's
think
so much help along that line too now.
yeah,
This logo, my logo and,
right.
In Factor, well, the name I got from a friend of mine actually who's a creative designer himself. But I got my logo from Nine Designs, ran a little
Mhm.
competition there. I've used them for a couple of things actually over the years, but there's sometimes I find that entrepreneurs are a little unclear about what it means to be an independent contractor versus an employee. So you have to have somebody that's operating independently. They bring their own expertise to the table. They're
Mhm.
not solely taking direction from you from an IRS perspective. So you got to make sure you meet those IRS
Of
criteria.
course,